All present out in the hallway.
Okay. Mr. Williams, is there anything we need to discuss before we bring the jury in today?
No, Judge.
Mr. Davis, anything from you?
No, sir.
All right. Are all 9 here, sir? All right. Let's get going.
All rise.
Good morning. Please be seated. It's good to see all 9 of my jurors today. I appreciate you coming on a beautiful Friday morning. Talking to the bailiff this morning, I don't know how many more mornings we're going to get 60 degrees and sunny. It's going to be hot here pretty soon, but it was a beautiful morning, and hopefully you'll be able to enjoy some time outside today during your breaks, because it's a great day to get some fresh air, but we'll make sure you have ample opportunity to do that today. If you'll remember, I let you go a little bit early yesterday. Part of the reason for that is the state has rested their case, which means at this point in time we pivot and let the defense present any evidence or testimony that they would like to present to you. So it's going to be the same type of system today with witnesses and exhibits, etc., except that instead of me asking who the state would like to call, at this point I'm going to look at Mr. Davis and see who he would like to talk to. So just know that process of the defense calling witnesses and presenting evidence begins today, to the extent that the defendant would like to present any evidence or testimony. That being said, Mr. Davis, who would you like to call first today?
Caleb Corbin, Your Honor.
Caleb Corbin. Good to see you again, Mr. Corbin. If you'll raise your right hand for me, sir.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You can sit down, sir. Thank you. Same instructions as last time, Mr. Corbin. Okay, sir?
Yes, sir.
All right. Mr. Davis?
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Corbin.
Good morning.
And I know you've testified before in this case, but you were previously employed by the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, correct?
Yes, sir.
And your position there, you were the IT guy?
Yes, sir.
And that was a job that you did by yourself, correct?
Yes, sir.
But you currently work with the Bay County Sheriff's Office
Yes, sir.
in a similar position?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's go back. How long were you employed again with the Jackson County Sheriff's Office?
It was around 4 years.
4 years? And you left in 2019?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, just wanted to kind of go back a little bit on, so the Jackson County Sheriff's Office went through a couple different types of body cameras, correct?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
And part of your responsibility was making sure the cameras were, I guess, working.
Yes, sir.
You didn't have anything to do with downloading, picking what was going to be saved or not saved, correct?
No, sir.
Okay. And the Jackson County Sheriff's Office developed a pretty formal policy in September of 2017, correct?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
And was that when you got the newer Axon cameras?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Okay. Prior to that policy and prior to the getting the Axon cameras, was there somebody at the Sheriff's Office that was designated to review videos and decide which ones needed to be saved and which ones needed to be deleted?
Yes, sir.
And who was that?
That'd be my conscience.
And then once the new policy was implemented, when you got the new Axon cameras, Did it switch to you that was reviewing the videos?
No, sir.
Okay. You were still just in charge of making sure that they were functioning?
Yes, sir, that's
Okay.
correct.
Who was it after the new policy in September of 2017 that was responsible for making sure videos were downloaded, saved properly, and not deleted?
That'd be Mike Hodges.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Mr. Williams?
That whole time you were there working in that capacity, did you ever once see or have any indication that Mike Hodges deleted a video improperly?
No, sir.
That's all.
All right, Mr. Davis, anything else?
No, sir.
All right, appreciate you being here, Mr. Corbin. Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Davis, who would you like to call next, sir?
Jeffrey O'Pry.
Jeffrey O'Pry. Raise your right hand, sir.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm?
Please be seated, sir. Mr. O'Pry, that is our jury out there, so you need to speak loud enough that they can hear you. We've noticed the closer you get to that mic, the better they'll be able to hear you. The second thing is if you hear an objection, if you'll pause your testimony, let me hear what the objection is, and I'll instruct you how to proceed, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Davis.
Thank you. Could you state your name for the record, please?
Jeffrey O'Pry
And how are you employed?
with the Florida Highway Patrol.
And how long have you been employed with the Highway Patrol?
Approximately 6.5 years.
And prior to that, did you have any other law enforcement experience?
Yes, sir.
What other agencies have you worked with?
I worked for the Jackson County Sheriff's Office for approximately 12.5 years. And Mariana Police Department for about a year.
So that's about 20 years of law enforcement experience?
Correct.
Okay. And you're with the Florida Highway Patrol, you're based out of Bay County, is that correct?
That's correct.
But does your area cover Jackson County?
It does.
Okay. So you're regularly on patrol in Jackson County?
That's correct.
And during your years with the Highway Patrol, did you ever, I guess, go out on a call or on a stop where Mr. Wester was present?
Multiple times.
Okay, so not just one time?
Correct.
Okay. If I could have just a moment, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
I wanted to direct your attention to a stop from April 8th of 2018 with an individual by the name of Joshua Emanuel. Do
Yes,
you
sir.
recall that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you've had a chance to view some of the video of that stop?
That's correct.
Okay. So your memory has been refreshed and you remember that now?
That's correct.
Okay. And this was a vehicle that was pulled over by Mr. Wester, correct?
That's correct.
And how soon after the vehicle was pulled over did you arrive?
Pretty much immediately.
Okay. Had Mr. Wester started any type of search of the vehicle before you arrived?
No, sir.
Was Mr. Emanuel still seated in his car when you arrived?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And at some point, he's brought out of the vehicle?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And do you recall what happened, why Mr. Wester went to search the vehicle?
Mr. Emanuel had told Deputy Wester that there was a gun in the center console, and so for officer safety, Deputy Wester went to retrieve the gun.
And while he was doing that, were you standing by with Mr. Emanuel?
I was.
Okay. And how far away from Mr. Emanuel's car do you believe you were standing with Mr. Emanuel?
No further than I am from you now.
Okay, so about this close?
About this close, yes.
Okay. And this was during the day?
That's correct.
Okay. And were you watching as Mr. Wester searched the vehicle?
I always try to position myself to where I can see the person that was driving the vehicle and the officer. That way if a car swerves and hit,
Okay.
for safety reasons. Yes, I could see him.
So part of your attention is you want to make sure that everybody's safe, but you're
Correct.
also observing what Mr. Wester was doing.
Correct.
Okay. And the car that Mr. Emanuel was driving, kind of a smaller vehicle, correct?
That's correct.
And would you say Mr. Wester's kind of a big guy?
I would, sir.
Okay.
No offense.
Now, when you, and Mr. Wester was also, I'm sorry, do you remember what Mr. Wester found in the vehicle during his search?
A syringe?
Okay. And I'm assuming at some point after he found it, you saw the syringe, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when Mr. Wester went to search the vehicle, before he started the search, did you see him with a syringe?
No, sir.
He was also wearing short sleeve shirts, correct?
Correct.
And you didn't see him walking to the car with a syringe in his hand or anything like
No,
that,
sir.
did you?
No, sir.
And Mr. Wester never got his full body into the car during the search, did he?
No, sir.
While he was searching, did you notice him reaching towards his pockets or anything like that?
No, sir.
What about after Mr. Wester shows you and Mr. Emanuel the syringe? We saw in the video that there's some, for Mr. Emanuel, he denies knowledge, denies anything about that syringe.
Correct.
Did that concern you at all?
Not at all. We hear that daily.
Okay. So somebody denying that they had drugs when they're found during a search is not unusual.
Correct.
And while you were there, this far away, watching Mr. Wester search this vehicle, did you notice anything unusual about the search?
No, sir.
Nothing further.
Mr. Williams?
You told Mr. Davis that you believe you arrived on scene almost immediately at the time that Deputy Wester made the stop?
Correct.
Okay. Did the defendant already have his search gloves on at the time he was making that contact immediately when you got there?
I wouldn't suppose he did. I didn't really.
Well, the video doesn't show it, so what do you remember?
I don't recall him having his gloves on then, no.
Okay. Where did he get his gloves for the search? Because the video we do have that they've seen, he's got his gloves on. So where would he have gotten those gloves? Do you remember?
I do not specifically remember, no, sir.
Now, you told Mr. Davis that he would have, you try to position yourself, it's your normal practice, position yourself where you can see the deputy for officer safety and also the person who's being detained or who's outside of the car, correct?
Correct.
We all understand that there's a lot of logic to that. Suffice it to say, you didn't leave Mr. Emanuel and go to the car and watch Mr. Wester inside of the car searching it, did you?
No, I did not.
So you didn't actually see whether he really found the syringe in that baggie in that spot that he says, did you?
No, I cannot attest to that, no.
And you, even before that, were you able to go in that car before this defendant allegedly found those things there? Were you able to go in there and see if they were really there before that?
I never went in the car.
So you can't say that they were there before that, and you can't say that you saw the defendant find it there, can you?
No, sir.
That's all, Judge.
Mr. Davis?
Just a moment. Trooper O'Pride, could you see into the vehicle through the windows?
I don't recall the tent situation on that vehicle, no, sir.
But you did not see anything unusual about that search?
No, sir.
If you had seen something unusual, what would you have done?
I would have arrested somebody if I thought they were planting drugs.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Anything else, Mr. Williams?
No, Judge.
All right. Mr. O'Pride, good to see you today, sir. Stay safe.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Davis, who would you like to call next?
Trevor Lee.
Trevor Lee. Morning, sir.
Morning.
Mr. Lee, if you'll raise your right hand for us.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be
Please sit down, Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee, a couple things. Our jury's sitting out here today. If you'll speak loud enough, they can hear you and directly into the mic. If you hear an objection, just pause your testimony and I'll tell you what to do, okay?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Davis?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Lee, could you state your name for the record, please?
Trevor Lee,
And or Deputy Lee, where are you employed?
I'm currently employed at the Bay County Sheriff's Office.
And how long have you been there?
January of this year.
About 6 months or so, or about 5 months?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And before that, where did you work?
The Jackson County Sheriff's Office.
And how long were you at the Jackson County Sheriff's Office?
About 6.5 years.
And was that your first job in law enforcement?
Yes, sir, it was.
And do you know Mr. Wester?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. And you two worked at the Jackson County Sheriff's Office together, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you were already there when Mr. Wester was hired, correct?
That's correct.
And was it a common occurrence for you two to be working the same shifts?
Yes, sir, it was.
And would it be a common occurrence for you two to go out on the same calls together?
Yes, sir.
I want to take you to June 3rd of 2018, where Mr. Wester pulled over a vehicle being driven by a Mr. Fears. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And have you had a chance to review the report and the video of that stop?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I believe you were talking with Mr. Fears. And did Mr. Fears give you consent to search the vehicle?
I believe that's correct.
Okay. And had you been in contact with Mr. Fears previously?
Not from any interaction by myself. I think there was a previous traffic stop,
That's
but
what
I didn't stop him.
Okay. But
the
you
time
were-
before.
you remembered him from a previous traffic stop maybe a couple weeks earlier?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But we'll focus on the June 3rd, 2018 stop. So consent to search the vehicle is given, correct?
Yes, sir.
And both you and Mr. Wester participated in the search, correct?
That's correct.
And during the search of the vehicle, did you find anything illegal?
Yes, sir.
Do you recall what you found?
It would have been a small clear vial, I think with a blue top under the front passenger seat.
And what, if anything, could you observe in that vial?
believe there was a small shard of crystal-like substance.
And based on your training and experience, did you believe that to be something potentially illegal?
Yes, sir.
And while you're searching the vehicle, you're on one side and Mr. Wester's on the other, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then at some point, he's on the same side as you, except he's in the back seat, correct?
That sounds about right. Yes, sir.
And that would have been before you found this little vial, correct?
Correct.
And then Mr. Wester goes back to the other side. Did you do something to the front passenger seat while you were searching the car?
I probably would have moved it forward.
Okay. And then when you then went to the back seat, is that when you found this vial?
Yes, sir. That sounds accurate.
Okay. Did you see Mr. Wester plant anything there?
No, sir.
Did you see him do anything unusual during this search?
No, sir.
If you had seen him plant something there, would you have just let it go?
No, sir.
Okay. What would you have done?
He probably would have been placed in handcuffs, if I'm going to
So
be
you would
honest.
have, if you saw something, you would have put Mr. Wester in handcuffs yourself?
Yep.
On the spot?
Yes, sir.
And I'm assuming this was not the first search you've ever done with Mr. Wester, correct?
No, sir.
Okay. On any search that you've ever been on with him, have you,
Overruled.
on any search that you've ever been on with him, have you ever seen anything unusual?
No, sir.
Have you ever seen him plant evidence?
No, sir.
And so we talked a little bit about, with Mr. Fears, there was a time, maybe a couple weeks before this June 3rd stop, where you were part of a search of his vehicle at that time too, correct?
I believe I arrived to assist on a stop at, I think it was at Blondie's, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. And was that with Mr. Wester?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And there was a female passenger in that car?
Yes, sir.
And were you guys, did you find anything illegal during that search?
I think there was some narcotics located in the car.
Okay. And was that passenger arrested?
I believe she was, yes, sir.
Okay. I think I have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
No further questions.
Mr. Williams?
Told Mr. Davis that you viewed that video prior to today, correct?
Yes, sir.
You don't dispute that it's accurate?
No,
Correct.
sir.
I'm sorry?
You said, do I dispute that it's accurate?
You do not dispute that it's accurate,
Correct.
right? Okay.
Yes.
Now, when Mr. Davis was asking just a moment ago about the reference on that video to a prior stop at Blondie's on Mr. Fears, you remember answering his questions about that?
Uh-huh.
Okay, and at that point in that stop, Mr. Fears wasn't riding in the same car, was he? It was a different car, wasn't it?
I believe that's correct.
And Mr. Fears wasn't the one in possession of meth, it was that female, correct?
Correct.
Okay, but it's also clear on that video, when that's being discussed, the jury's heard it, it's an exhibit, but when it's being discussed, it's clear that that's a factor that you're considering in making the decision or the opinion that this is Mr. Fears' methamphetamine on this stop in June, correct?
If that's what the video depicts, I believe.
Right? The video shows, like you just answered Mr. Davis's questions, you beginning your search at the front passenger side, is that right?
Correct.
And the defendant begins on the driver's side front, correct?
Yes, sir, that sounds accurate.
And then at a certain point, the defendant, we can see it on his body camera, we see him walk, and he's at the back passenger side briefly, right?
Yes, sir.
And you see him bend down towards the floorboard, because his camera gets stuffed in the seat. I'm not saying that's, but that's what it shows, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so he's bending down towards the floorboard area, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, at that time, you're still at the front passenger seat. You're not with him in that back seat.
Correct.
Okay, so you can't see exactly where he's bending down and where his hands are exactly, can you?
I was not paying attention to what he was doing, no, sir. I wouldn't have been able to see what he was doing.
And you said what you would do if you saw the defendant or any other deputy plan evidence,
Yes, sir.
correct?
Anybody would have done anything that I would have suspected would have been illegal or illicit in nature, I would have put them in.
Understood. But at that point, did you have any specific reason? Was it in your head that you had any specific reason to look at the defendant and watch what he was doing that closely?
No, sir.
So you weren't watching him that closely, were you?
No, sir.
You were searching your area and he was searching a different area.
Correct.
And he bent down towards the floorboard of that area while he was back there, didn't he?
According to the video, yes, sir.
And then the defendant walked around and went back to the area that he was originally at, which was the driver's door area, correct? Searching
Correct.
that seat.
Yes, sir.
And then he moved back to move the driver's seat forward, right?
Yes, sir.
And then he's the one who actually asks you, does that seat move forward over on your side? He's the one who prompts you to do that, doesn't he?
According to the video, yes, sir. I don't recall it from memory, but from the video, yes, sir.
All right. And then at that point is when you move the seat forward, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then you go to that same area that he's already been in. Isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
And at that point, that's when that's the first time you find that pill capsule with that blue top of meth, right?
That's correct.
After the defendant's already been there in an area that you weren't watching him closely, correct?
That's correct.
That's all, Judge.
Mr. Davis?
Deputy Lee,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Williams was just asking you about the video. Do you also recall in the video, when Mr. Wester is on the driver's side, you asked him initially to come over to the passenger side, to the back seat first, correct?
In the video, I did, yeah.
If it's on the video.
Correct, yes.
You would agree that the video is accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sorry, let's try not to talk over each other, or we're going to drive the court reporter crazy. So you asked him to come over there first, correct?
Yes, sir. If the video is accurate to that point, yes, sir.
Thank you. Nothing further.
All right, Mr. Lee, it's good to see you today. Please stay safe. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.